Have you ever wondered how your family dynamics are impacting your child? The truth of the matter is, families and the members within them are all interconnected. Our behaviors, our attitudes, they all impact one another. In this video, we're going to uncover our understanding of family systems and how understanding how the family dynamic works will help us to know what is the best parenting approach we should take in supporting our kids. I'm Lisa, a child behavior expert and a parent coach. With my experience as a pediatric OT, I have seen so many different types of family dynamics in my practice. I've seen firsthand how our behaviors and how we respond to our kids impacts their behaviors, both in a positive and a negative way. It's important that we, first of all, acknowledge our own dynamics, how we behave in moments, because when our kids misbehave and we don't recognize that we play a role in the way that they respond to us, the way they behave, we start to point our fingers solely at them. And we think that the rude behaviors that we're seeing, the lying, the whining, the complaining, all of this is directed straight at our child and that they are the only reasons why they're behaving this way. We have to recognize that there are interactions that we might be having with our kids. There's a dynamic going and a flow going within our family that interconnects all of us. And so our behaviors and how we respond will impact their behaviors as well. When we have family issues like marital conflicts or neglect, or emotional projection. So things like if we're feeling a certain way and we subconsciously project those emotions and come off as angry towards our child because we were angry from something that happened at work, and we're bringing in our feelings and emotions into that moment, we might be dumping our feelings onto our child, which is amplifying the behaviors that we're seeing. We have to recognize that our own family issues and any conflicts we have can and will impact our kids and their development both emotionally and psychologically. There are also things like generational trauma or generational behavioral patterns that what you might be bringing into our own families. So if you think about when you were a young child and your parents used to yell and punish you whenever you did something wrong, maybe you didn't get a certain grade, maybe you didn't hit a certain achievement and you would get punished for it. Now, when your child is struggling with certain things and they're not able to achieve, maybe if it's even something small like packing their own bags or remembering to bring their own water bottle to school, this automatically sends you into a triggered response. In these moments, we start to bring our own generational burdens on our past experiences and we project it onto our kids. And our kids are feeling those big emotions that we're expressing, and they start to internalize it, and thus they might be expressing it outwardly in inappropriate behaviors. So we have to remember that there are so many different dynamics going on within the family, both from ourselves and our partners and other people who are involved within your family ecosystem. So understanding this connection can greatly help you to unpack what might be going on with your child and the challenging behaviors that you are seeing. When we can pinpoint what is going on within our family dynamics and start making changes within those, this is where we start to see changes within our child's behaviors. So there are two key concepts that we need to explore here. The first concept is family projection process. This is where we might unintentionally be bringing our own emotions into the moment and be perpetuating some of the negative behaviors that we're seeing in our kids. Here's an example. If we have parental anxiety, where we're constantly worrying about our kids, we might start to become overprotective and have certain expectations of our kids. This overprotection can cause us to behave in ways where we do many things for our kids because we feel that if we do it for them, it shows them that we love them. And it shows that we have a purpose in their lives, and all that anxiety that we're feeling towards ourselves of not being good enough, we overcompensate by overdoing things for our own kids. But what this does for our kids is that they start to become dependent on us. They don't know how to take initiative for themselves. And then these behaviors might start to ruminate and trickle into everyday life. They might go to school and then struggle to do things for themselves. and they might start expecting certain things from other people because they are always served when they are home with you. And so we have to recognize that the behavior that we see in our kids of feeling like they are entitled to everything, and they might act out and come off as a little bit of a brat, it might be stemming from certain behaviors that we are doing ourselves. And so I know this is a really hard message to hear because it feels like there is judgment and blame being put on yourself. But I want us to take a step away from these labels because it doesn't serve anyone when we immediately go into judgmental mode and then we have to be defensive about our actions. It's really about putting our guards down and really letting go of our own egos and recognizing that maybe there is something that I'm doing that might be contributing to the situation I'm seeing with my child. What can I do differently that can serve my child and help them improve their skills and fulfill the needs that they have? This becomes a more productive conversation when it comes to exploring family dynamics. It's not about pointing fingers at maybe someone in the family who you see is behaving in a way that is perpetuating your child's behaviors. It's about being open enough with one another and being vulnerable about talking about what are some things that we might be doing that is contributing to the challenges that our kids are feeling that's causing them to act out. So when it comes to emotional projection, my tip here is to start working on reflecting. Think about the triggers that you have that cause you to feel anxiety or cause you to feel anger or frustration with your child. Identify where these triggers were coming from. Sometimes it can be something that your child does that reminds you of things that happened in your own childhood. It might also be from certain expectations that you have that are unrealistic for your child. The second thing to do is work on your own self-regulation. When you notice that you're triggered, learn to take a deep breath, to give yourself that pause before you respond. Because when we don't give ourselves that pause, we often react out of emotion. We also need to learn self-regulation tools for ourselves. When we can feel that we're tensing, our shoulders are hiking up, our hands are clenching because we're getting upset with our child. What are some techniques that can help calm your body down so that you don't react to them? When you're able to calm your body down in that moment, you're able to respond more effectively. That will be able to communicate the right words and message to your child and what they need in that moment. The second key concept is multi-generational transmission process. This concept explores the patterns of behavior and emotional triggers that we might have experienced as kids. So, like I mentioned earlier, the idea that when you were young and your parents behaved a certain way, they reacted towards you when you did something that wasn't correct or wasn't up to their standards. Now, you might be bringing those types of responses into your own parenting. But now you have to recognize, were those responses healthy? Was it just something that your parents just did because that's all they knew? These are things to really reflect on because many of us who have had parents who grew up in the older generations, they had a very different mentality. And there were different traditions, different cultural influences that might have shaped their parenting style. And those parenting styles just might not apply to how things work nowadays in our modern day society. For instance, if you grew up in a very disciplinary home, a more authoritarian home, where parents were very strict, they had high expectations of you. And this is what you knew, this is what you grew up with. And so as you're now in your parenting journey, you have the same expectations for your child. But now you might have a child who has different struggles. They might have different developmental challenges. They might be on the spectrum. They might have ADHD. And because of these challenges, they're not able to fulfill the expectations that your parents might have had on you. And you might need to start shifting the way you perceive your child and also understand how it is that they learn, because all of us learn in different ways. You know, some of us might have learned really well if we were given really hard discipline and we had very high expectations held for us. But for some other people, having those types of expectations just stimulates anxiety and fear and self-doubt, and it ends up pulling us down, or pulling your child down into a place where they feel stuck. And so continuing with that type of parenting style while knowing you have a child who often gets themselves stuck and doesn't do well with that, quote unquote tough love type of approach, shifting your approach in a more kind but still with holding firm boundaries can be a better approach that's going to help them be able to achieve better success and achieve, their highest possibilities. Another really good example of this is about sharing emotions. Now, when we look at a lot of past generations, especially when you come from maybe immigrant families, or families where parents were not always there. They were really busy with trying to provide for the family. Sharing emotions was not a commonplace for families and what they talked about. They didn't share how they felt. They didn't share about how someone's actions made them feel in that moment. A lot of that was stifled. A lot of the messaging that they grew up with was that you don't talk about your feelings, don't cry in front of others. And so we grew up in that, and now we're bringing that into our parenting. And what we're seeing today is a lot of parents are recognizing that sharing emotions is actually a really great way to build connection. And when we don't allow our kids to express themselves, they feel so disconnected from everyone in the family. They feel like they're so isolated. You might have a child who has challenging behaviors or is neurodivergent, and they just see the world differently. And when there isn't an open communication of emotions, they often feel very stifled and isolated in their own feelings. They feel very different. This breeds a lot of disconnect and resentment towards other family members. So it's so important to cultivate that openness and that vulnerability and safe place to share how it is you're feeling without judgment. And I know that that can be such a huge shift for many of us, even like personally for myself, growing up in a family of immigrants, it was not something that was commonplace. And so it was very difficult to shift my framework into that. But you start to recognize that when you can start expressing yourself freely, start sharing with other people how it made them feel, that starts to build connection. It starts to build strong relationships, and that might be something that is missing in your family dynamic today. So give that a shot. Start being open about sharing your feelings with one another, being vulnerable with each other, and not going straight into defense mode if someone says something to you in your family that you don't agree with. Sometimes it's just about being an open listener and giving people the space to talk, and then you will be given your time to talk as well. So here are my key takeaways from family systems. You need to work on your family dynamics rather than just focusing on your child's behavior, because your child's behavior is not standalone. It is not the only thing that needs to be worked on. It's the whole family, everyone who's involved, making sure that you get everyone's perspective in on this, and be self-reflective on yourself and what you might be bringing into your family system that is contributing to some of the challenges that you're seeing. This takes me to my next point about exploring certain patterns and being open to going into therapy, getting to the root of why you're triggered by certain things that's being said in your family, by certain behaviors that you see. When you can be self-reflective, this helps you to unpack layers that are really holding back your whole family as a whole. And third, involve all family members in developing a supportive and cohesive environment, right? You guys are all a team, and you're here to make your whole family whole and compatible with one another. So you guys have to work together to get there. Also, share this with other friends of yours that might be struggling with this. If you're noticing that there are family dynamics going on that's impacting every individual in that family or maybe a particular child, this is such important information to share, because the more that they can understand their role in this, the more they can help the child that is struggling. So please, if you like this video, like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to share this with a friend or a family member, and send me any comments if you have any questions about family systems, family dynamics. If you want to share any personal stories, I'd love to read them. And I hope you guys like this. I'll see you guys in the next one.